Hey, this is another episode of Around the Block with GoodBlock, and we have a very special guest, Jesse Schulman, today, and we are going to be talking about some really cool and I think kind of crazy stuff. Now would be a great time to hit that subscribe button and like. So on this episode, we have Mass Adopt Sean from GoodBlock, and we have Nathaniel Moss's Market Minute, and we have very special guest, Jesse Schulman, lead dev of the Telos Core Devs. Jesse and I have worked together. Gosh, it's been 4 years now, man. And yeah, very exciting to have this today. Hey, welcome, Jesse.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Glad to be on the block. We're Callius. We've been with Telos since before launch and run a bunch of infrastructure. A lot of the APIs that people use are hitting our APIs. And we've also been helping develop everything that makes Telos great for, well, like you said, almost 4 years now. Or
yeah, 4 years since the white paper anyway. Yeah. Anyway, down memory lane. We're really psyched to have you here. Jesse and I were talking about some stuff happening on Solana this morning, and we just kind of bounce things back, like what we think's happening. And I just thought this would be a conversation that a lot of people would like hear. But while I've got you, another thing we were talking about on the Core Devs meeting was sTLOS. And last time we were in, we encouraged people to vote however they wanted. The amend voted was passed by 100% and had a lot of people voting. So that's great, and that means that very soon we can have sTLOS. Do you want to tell people what to expect with that, Jesse?
Sure. Yeah. So we're fully audited, code complete from a contract perspective, and the front end is in the progress of being tested. There's a couple of things to be finished on it so that you'll be able to go to Teloscan, log in and stake Telos, get back sTLOS, see what your balances are, and then unstake when you want to redeem back to Telos. So that's pretty exciting. Hopefully, soon we'll have that completely tested, and we'll start the process to roll it out on mainnet, which will be keeping everybody in the community aware of kind of what the schedule looks like and what the steps will be, so everybody can follow along and jump in when it's live. We have quite a few people. I think almost every day somebody's asking about staking that is coming to us from like the EVM side. So there's the demand for staking, and the people that want to do it, that know how to do it on our native network, they're already doing it. But the people that want to do it on our EVM, some of them, they just want to stick with MetaMask, and they'll have that option soon.
So soon, what we have been telling people, it was mid-August, if it passed, to be ready. And I think what we decided is that feels very safe to us, right? In fact, it could be, there's a few things we still need to do, but that mid-August timeframe, pretty confident we can hit that.
Yeah, no, I think that's reasonable, and we've never really done dates at Telos, right?
It's just an idea, yeah.
EVM, we launched the network using kind of checklist milestone, knock it down. It'll be live when we make that last box go green. So, but we're at the point where we're starting to check off the boxes. We know what they are, and there's no external dependencies on an audit or anything else. So it's
Nathaniel, Sean, do you guys know about sTLOS? You guys hear people talking about it? Have thoughts about it?
Yeah, that's gonna be fantastic for a lot of people. And I think a lot of people don't fully understand how that can benefit them, and so I think educating them and bringing them up to speed in the simplest terms possible will be really beneficial once that as we're sort of ramping up towards it. I think that's going to be huge, allowing people the opportunity to discover how it can positively impact them and their bottom line is going to be super valuable.
Well, you are mass adoption, so we will hope that you will help the masses understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah, personally for me, MetaMask, I like to use MetaMask a lot more than I use Anchor. And so being able to just have all my coins in the EVM is better. Just for me personally, because I tend to use MetaMask a lot more. because I use like Omnidex.
That's really interesting because we know that there are a lot of users who want that and do that, but I tend to assume that there are people who don't really know about Telos Native so much and don't want to try something new. But you obviously know a lot about Telos Native,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
in order to vote, I
that's
have
just
to
your
convert
preference.
back to native so that I can vote. Yeah.
Yeah, and leave it there, right? Because
Yep. Then leave
when
it
you
there.
vote,
So
it's the amount in the account when the vote closes that is
right.
functional, right? Otherwise, you could double vote.
Yep.
All right. Well, so sTLOS is very exciting. Just wanted to give people a little
I'm
bit
excited about it.
a notice. One of the things we talked about today, what I think is kind of exciting, and I hope we end up doing, is when you're in Telos Scan, it will not only show your Telos balance, but your sTLOS balance at the same time. Since a lot of people are going to be using sTLOS, and there's going to be a lot of like it's going to be interesting because a lot of the staking pools right now and swap pools are going to go from or liquidity pools are going to go from Telos and Ethereum probably to sTLOS and Ethereum, right? It's going to split that up a little bit, but I think mostly there's like not a lot of reason to just have regular Telos sitting around on Telos EVM when it could be making 10% or so.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's like you were saying, I think there's a lot of cool things that will come of it. Like we were talking about it earlier today. It's kind of like that field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. So I'm looking forward to seeing what people do with it. I think inevitably there'll be some pools that get created pairing sTELOS with Telos
Yeah.
and other assets, and that sTELOS and Telos pool might be part of like the routing for a trade that finds the
Absolutely.
best
Yeah,
path.
that could be big, right? Because if you're keeping your Telos in sTELOS, right? Why instead of unstaking and waiting 10 days and whatnot, um, you could just trade your sTELOS in a same
Right.
inline transaction, right? I would expect yeah, Omnidex and Zappy and all those guys to just, you know, do that the same way that you can be trading for WTELs. Actually, you probably would be trading sTELs for WTELs, right?
Yeah, it would be WTELOS with the way those pools work, and then and yeah, like it's the ERC 4626 standard, so that's somewhat new, but I think there's probably a lot of like interesting stuff that's going to come out in the space that like leverages that, and will now allow any apps that are building using the yield bearing tokens, like that's their model needs a token that like accrues value. Now they can come to Telos and actually have a pretty significant amount of APR on a token.
Yeah.
Like there's just a lot of different interesting things that I've seen done in the past that would fit really well with this model of a yield bearing token. So
because Telos EVM is newer, right? We're not, a lot of things we did had already been deployed elsewhere for a long time, but this token vault token standard is pretty new, and I think we're on kind of on the leading edge there. So that's kind of exciting. It just came out of beta from Open Zeppelin 3 months ago, I think.
Is it a dumb question to ask, what your guys' recommendation is as far as if people are, should they continue to do Rex or should they do both, or should they?
Right now, you'll get a little bit more money on Rex for sure. You will
Okay.
retain the ability to vote with Rex, and the way Rex matures is once you've staked it. Currently, it takes 4 days of being staked, and then it's liquid at any time you want. Now, I actually think that's a mistake. I think there should be an unstaking mechanism like with sTELOS. The way sTELOS works is you get a lower yield, you get no voting right now. But remember, we used to not have the ability to vote with Rex staked tokens anyway. So I think my hope is that we move towards also including sTELOS in voting in the future. But no guarantees. But that's something I want us to look at. But then once you unstake, you have to wait 10 days until it's liquid, right? From the time you decide to unstake. And Jesse, I can't remember. Do you still earn tokens during that time, or during that period, are you also not earning?
You're not earning. The way that the sTLOS works is it takes it, it converts it back, and then it sends it over to a separate contract that's an escrow contract that just kicks off a 10-day escrow period before you can get it back. So you stop accruing the APR when you unstake, but you don't get access to the tokens for 10 days, which is why it'll be interesting to see a pool where it's Telos against sTLOS, because instead of waiting the 10 days, you could swap right away. But there's going to be a discount there because you're not going to get the same amount of Telos back, because people aren't going to be willing to buy the sTLOS for that exact rate. There'll be some discount based on the 10 days that
whatever that arbitrage is.
It's an AMM, so there's no buyer, but the arbitrage, the open market price that gets figured out will be based on that 10-day lockup.
So that's probably a good money-making opportunity, because there's really no impermanent loss, very little impermanence loss there, because impermanent loss comes when those tokens move in big ways. But this will probably be liquid Telos will probably be just a little bit more than sTLOS. So obviously it's advantageous to leave it in Rex. You can, because you get more money and and all those things, right? So you're actually kind of paying a premium by putting it into sTLOS, which is why there was a little bit of debate whether we really needed it. But we know that there are people who just want to leave who don't have a Telos native account anymore, right? So for those people, put it in sTLOS and probably don't unstake. Most likely the what you lose from unstaking will be be like 9.5 days worth of interest instead of 10 days. But it's just more of a hassle. If you have both wallets, though, I actually think the killer move is leave it in Rex, and then you can instantly send. Once your 4 days are done, you can instantly unstake from Rex and send it directly to EVM in a second, right? So maybe we build a little something to facilitate that. I mean, anyone can do it in 2 transactions, but maybe there's a button where you can do it in 1. I don't know, but that's what I would do. But I'm very comfortable being on Telos native, and so it just depends how comfortable you are there.
Yeah,
I think for people that know how to use native and already in Rex, like they're not necessarily the target audience of sTLOS. The target audience is all these people who have heard about the rewards but are purely EVM users that want access to it. And I think, there's some interesting things, like I said, that'll come out of it. Like, that we might see people build that leverage sTLOS that you won't be able to do on native. As those things emerge, then there'll be more incentive to go there.
We base that time frame of unstaking and the split between Rex and sTLOS on a poll that people took without having ever used it. So which is fine, because we can adjust that in the future if that's not right. So although only the people with Telos native are able to vote, so we may want to take that into consideration. Hey,
I would love it if we could vote.
We did that. That's how it was with Rex, and it took a while, and then when we voted on what to do, and then we implemented it. It just took time. I think really good stuff is happening with hybrid native EVM interactions on Telos. I think there's a lot of possibility there, and so as we explore that may become possible. All right, that was a great discussion on sTLOS, way more than I thought we'd do. Let's go to our main course today, because it's kind of exciting and interesting and very very quickly emerging. So that is, Solana just had a big people call it a hack, where millions of dollars were lost and thousands of accounts. And so let's talk for a second about what is a hack. Do blockchains actually get hacked? What are these things, and what happened on Solana in particular? By the way, this is recorded in the afternoon of Wednesday, the 3rd of August. So things may change by the time you see it on hopefully Friday.
Let's talk about the Solana side first and what that looks like.
So what happened on Solana is less than 24 hours ago, there were thousands of accounts that got drained. of their Sol and USDC tokens, and people were trying to figure out what's going on. It doesn't seem like it's an actual blockchain problem, but hard to say until you know what's going on. Most of these people were using one of four mobile wallets, is my understanding, and they were largely accounts that hadn't been used in maybe 6 months. Interesting thing also is that there are a few Ethereum accounts that also got drained that might have had the same private key, even though those would lead to different public keys, and that they were drained at like the same time as the corresponding Solana accounts. So very interesting. What's going on here, guys?
It's always about people. I mean, that's my opinion. I think you're hacking apps, you're hacking wallets, you're hacking people. Is the way I always kind of look at it, and I try to explain that to folks to help them understand what can happen. And so somewhere in Solana's infrastructure or team, I think that's my opinion, but that's where the problem happened with an individual or individuals.
Yeah. Well, it seems like it's not phishing, but it could but that's not the only thing. And like I always say, there's probably somebody on the team in some way who's even a small way who had access to code. Always look for those people.
Yeah.
You may not find them, but it's very hard to hide. But most of these things do seem to have that. But it's not a blockchain hack, right? Nobody's actually hacking the blockchain, right, Nathaniel?
No, I don't believe anybody's hacking the blockchain. No, the RPC servers still seem like they're still up.
Yeah, they're getting access to people's keys when they shouldn't have, right? So Jesse, what do you think about that? Well, you and I had this kind of long conversation about that, about what we thought it might be going on. Why don't you share your opinion, if you would?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's Wednesday afternoon, so by the time this airs, hopefully they figured it out. But I think we're approaching 24 hours of them not knowing what happened. So, and I think there's a bunch of theories. I read one that suggested one of these wallets actually exposed the seed phrase in plain text, and then I saw they revoked that statement and said that wasn't the case. And then there's other theories around like the elliptic curve encryption, which is how they generate the public keys and how the signing happens, and that if you use like an insecure technique with elliptic curve, that you can not have to expose the private key, but people can figure out the private key based on the signature and some other salts and things. That one pointed to when this happened in 2020, there was an app or a wallet that exposed part of what's used to make the signatures, and it either exposed it or it used like some counter or some value that could be known and figured out. And so people just needed the signature and the public key or the address. And from there, they could derive the private key. And then if you can derive the private key, then you could, in theory, go use that private key on other networks, which is why I think what we have seen, we do know, is there's over 8,000 addresses. Some of them haven't been used in,
I think a lot of them have
6 months. And all of them had funds stolen on Solana, and some of them had funds stolen on Ethereum, but every one that had funds stolen on Ethereum also was stolen on Solana. So if, the theory is that it's something in the Solana ecosystem that allowed a bad guy to either get the private key, like through software that hacks your computer, or, derive it, like this theory that I suggested. And then once they have that, then they say, oh, well, let's go see if you're using this on other networks. And they go,
it's really easy to take a it's really easy to take a private key and derive all kinds of different blockchains worth of data of public keys, right? You can do the same with EOS as well, or Telos, and so what basically the wallet imports the private key, and then it does all the math to create the public key, and they each use a different sort of derivation route, but essentially
Right.
you can get any of them. I think I don't think they're. I think it's much less likely that they're. We could do a 10 Telos bet, Jesse. If I think it's less likely that it has to do with the elliptical curve libraries. I think it's more likely for me that there's something something maybe that was in old code and has now been replaced because all these were older.
Mm.
Um, has been fixed. I think probably it's likely. I know of things where developers get in who aren't like on the main code, but they're
Mm-hmm.
contractors or whatever, and they do some work for a while, and then they are able sometimes to bury some stuff into GitHub repositories, and it's just kind of another scam that's going on, and
Right.
that's why you have to be really careful when you're hiring people, and
Yeah.
when all these developers come into your Telegram group and go, "Hey, I'm this guy. I'm just looking for work." It's like, I do not believe you. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a theory. What if it is this technique by which you get the public address and the signature and that third piece of data, and with those three you can get the private key? And what if that third piece of data was something that was just in some logs? What if it was either A, like you said, there was some bad code that ran for a few months, 6 months ago that emitted that piece of data, that third piece, or maybe it was something that like went into the logs and no longer goes in the logs. And what happened is that today or yesterday, somebody got their hands on those logs. Somebody compromised some server that just has logs from, forever. And they go, oh, look, for 2 weeks, 6 months ago, they were writing to the logs this third piece of data that you should never write to the logs. And, oh, by the way, it's a blockchain. I can go find all the signatures that they did. So they then say, okay, boom, that third piece of data, here's the signature it went in because that's on the blockchain. Boom, I got their keys. So, the timeline definitely plays an important piece in the Sherlock.
I would say also that like you could look at the libraries and say, okay, so these are 4 different wallets, and what commonalities do they have amongst all 4, particularly in the Solana and private key handling libraries? Is there something this could by the way have nothing to do with Solana's dev team, but just be a dependency. When in GitHub there's Dependabot that tells you need to update dependencies and things like that, and it could be something in some underlying library that has absolutely nothing to do with Solana, and they just happen to be the ones who are exposed. It's harder to imagine
theory
that.
that I have is,
even though even that, sometimes it takes a perfect storm, right? And I mean, we've seen this before in other examples. And like, what if that third party library was totally not malicious and just like, oops, we were logging this third piece of data, and then oops, those logs are still around, and then oops, some bad guy noticed those logs. Like, so those, like the trifecta where it's like the devs were the only thing they should have done is, I guess, audited every dependency and all of its source code, which, that's a high ask. And then, the devs of that third-party library, their mistake might have been that they left some logging in that they shouldn't have. And that's, and then, okay, good ops practice is that you actually do keep your logs around in a secure place, but they're logs, they're not
I think
necessarily...
all of the things that you just described, though, Jesse, is what leads to, because for the average person out there, they just see incorrectly that the Solana blockchain was hacked. It doesn't matter what the rest of the article says. It doesn't matter. And it's because of either incompetence or whatever, which is bad for the entire industry. When you look at those 3 things...
Yeah, a lot of people not even in crypto are going to think, oh, crypto's bad because they get hacked all the time. They're not going to look at any nuance, right?
And you're like, oh, well, it didn't. And then you try to go through the process. But it's those 3 things that you described that had had due diligence been done correctly from the beginning. And this is where I think one of the challenges within our space is that people take shortcuts as good people are taking shortcuts. Or they're like, oh, let's get this out on the market, or let's do this thing, and best practices aren't lived up to. Which even if we have in Telos, we are doing best practices, or in any number of other chains that are out there that are doing good things, that are following, best practices. It doesn't necessarily mean, for the rest of the industry, we're going to be associated with this Solana hack. So I think that's the challenge. And I think then going back to my soapbox is education. How do we educate people?
Yeah. It's also best practices, not
and anybody
practices.
You could have.
That's true. That's totally true. There is not going to be a perfect system. We are going to, the ball is dropped in outside of the decentralized space all the time, but people are so used to it, and the government covers up for it, or bails the banks out all the time. So,
well, or the banks reverse things, right? There's things like it is a public immutable ledger, right? It's immutable, and so there's no undoing. Although I think
Right.
Solana has taken action to freeze certain accounts,
They're slowing down the network.
There's it's still not
the one time
right?
they can't shut it down, right? Like, with Solana's been down like 4 times, and I believe they're actually slowing down their RPC nodes to slow it down. But this would actually be a time they could stop it and fix it. That's the advantage of a blockchain. You can stop.
Somebody actually was I think attacking that account. Like somebody was trying to spam the hacker's account to slow them down, and by doing that, spammed the RPCs and caused slowness across the board.
Let's be very clear. There's almost no chance this is an actual blockchain hack. This is a vulnerability in one of the wallets, and it's not really much of a distinction if you are the one who lost your coins, right? And this is definitely not something where I would want to see anybody in any other chain go, ha, Solana's down again. Solana going down because of design choices they made is one thing. Solana users and other users being robbed because someone in the chain at wallet level or underlying library level or whatever made a mistake or intentionally created an exploit that no one should celebrate that. That's really unfortunate. And you're right, like you say, Sean, it just takes the whole perception of the chain down. All right, so let's move on real quick to Moss's Market Minute. Nathaniel Moss, sysop at GoodBlock, has 60 seconds to give us his impression of the market, not financial advice. So 60 seconds on the clock. Ready? Go.
This is Moss's Market Minute monthly market movement metrics. First, we're going to do the red. Oddly enough, Solana was the first one. It's not as recovering as well as some other change, and that's even before the news today, so it's not likely to be going up anytime soon. Luna's down, Sol is down, Rose is down, all 5%. Whale is recovering better than the other chains, and that's at about 7%. Further lean in the green, we got Cardano up 10% over this month. Bitcoin's hit 23,000, that's 20% up. Telos is following the same trend, 16% up. Nice. Matic is 93% up. Solana, SHIB, and Polkadot are 20% up. Bitcoin Cash, PancakeSwap up 30% over the last 30 days. Ethereum is climbing out of its depression, a 50% increase. Optimism has been topping the charts with a 250% increase. Everyone who bought in July is green. Everyone who bought after that is recuperating. And that's the news for news for today.
All right, thank you, Nathaniel. That was something. For Doug's Alpha Drop, I will say that. So the EOCO Plus Coalition, soon to be renamed, something much better, has released the third release candidate for Mandel. That's going to update all EOS, Telos, Wax, all the blockchains, and it looks really good. Like most people think that this is likely to be the one. We're not going to need to have another release candidate. So that means that can move forward really quickly on Telos, EOS, Wax. So, that's a development. What you do with that is up to you. But that's my alpha drop for today.
That's a hot drop.
That is a hot drop. Fantastic.
Hot drop. And that takes us to BS of the week.
BS.
Block stuff of the week. We got a couple of good ones. Nathaniel, you want to kick off the first one? I think this one's yours.
Yeah, sure. So here, I'm going to toss this up on the screen there. The winner of the $1.28 billion lottery only got $433 million after taxes. So congratulations to the IRS on winning $846 million in the lottery. The subject took the payout, so they got half, and then all that, like basically 2/3 went to tax. So congratulations to the IRS.
Well, that doesn't mean the IRS didn't get all the rest. If you think that's a little bit not quite right math, right? So
the state of Illinois.
If he took a payout, and so let's say he got, $600 million, a mere $600 million, and then probably half of that or whatever had to go to taxes for IRS, and
right.
I don't know. Illinois has capital gains tax too, right? So in state income tax,
they do.
So some of that went to Illinois.
Yep.
We were talking
Oregon
about whether taking that payout was a good idea or not. You think it was like, was that right? So was that good? Should he have like, a lot of times you're like, do we want to take just the lump sum up front and do whatever we want with it, or do we want to take the annuity, right?
I think if you're making between 3% and 10% interest, you're gonna walk away with a pretty penny every year. So if it's on 3%, which is super low, $12 million a year, 12 million plus a year. If it's 10% or more, that's 40 million plus a year.
He could be a genius. He could be putting half of that into Telos right now at 19 cents,
which would be fine.
Tip of the hat if you do so, sir.
Are you ready for it? This is the Nancy Pelosi one. So Nancy Pelosi is going to Taiwan to create the dip she's going to buy.
Yeah, well, I think that's not quite the right way to say it, right? We got to do it the way,
fair.
Nancy Pelosi, prepares to buy the dip she creates by going to Taiwan.
Shoot,
so, very smart investor, Nancy Pelosi. She's been very prescient on things, and it has absolutely nothing to do, I'm sure, with the fact that she is the Speaker of the House. She's done great. Good for her. But yeah, like now she's gone to Taiwan over a lot of people's advice not to, and people are thinking, okay, that's going to crush the economy, right? I got to say personally, Taiwan is a country. China's position that they're not is bullshit. That's bullshit, right? Taiwan's a country. There's 23 million people who live there, right? And they live under the threat of getting Hong Konged, and it's just not right. And China goes around the world and says, and all their Belt and Road countries say, hey, don't ever say that Taiwan's a country, or and they try and get all these people to come on their side, but that's not fair to Taiwan, man. Taiwan's an awesome country. It's got awesome people. We are really close allies, and I actually think that she should go there. By the time she's she may not still be Speaker of the House, at the right time to go, because of how the midterm elections go. But
right.
So who knows? I hear you.
Yeah, saber rattling.
Well, I don't think she's the one saber rattling. I think that she's
not, but China is. My point being that yes, China could do something. Any country can do something who likes to rattle their sabers. We've seen Russia do that, but it's economically a poor decision from the standpoint of how much money is owed between these countries and the business that is transacted between the countries. So
Trying to,
the saber rattling makes us scared, makes us
yeah,
nervous.
but you're also dealing with the claiming of the sovereignty of this nation, right? China claims that it owns it.
She wants to put his mark on history and reclaim this and actually get it back. And I think there's reason to, I think there's reason to wonder if, what we would do. Like, given you can look at what's happened in Ukraine and what has and hasn't happened from their allied countries, unofficial allies, right? And I don't think we're officially allied, even though we've said we will support Taiwan. Nobody knows quite what that means, and people kind of think Americans, just don't have the appetite for anything, that they'll let it go if that means the gas goes down 50 cents a gallon. All right, that's a happy one.
That one ended great.
Yeah, we're gonna end it on that note.
Let's have something to swing it back up. One last thing. What would it be, guys?
One good thing.
It is a crypto spring again. It seems like after June and July, a lot of the stocks as well, but a lot of the market is increasing 10%, 15%. So whether this is a false thaw or an actual spring is yet to be told, but it really does seem like investors are getting ready to move back into the market right now.
What do you guys think? Do you think this is a bear trap?
There's too many ups for it to be a bear, to be a bear trap. Usually you get with the bear trap type indicators, you have the big players are moving, but little businesses aren't moving, but this just seems to be a general uplift.
Yeah, and if people are willing to hold, I think, and tentatively work their way back into the market, then they can see some things turn around. If they're wise as far as okay, I don't need to panic sell, I think, and it feels like that's been the case. Yeah, there's always going to be people who are going to panic sell, but I think there's been a lot.
It already happened.
Yeah, that there's people who are exactly. It is true that a lot of people did panic sell, but now those who held have started to get back into the market in a good way. So I think that's good.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. Jesse, thanks so much for joining us. Nathaniel, Massadop, Sean, thanks for being here, guys. I think this is a great one. All you guys viewing, if you're still here, like, subscribe, buttons, and we will see you next week on Around the Block.
Thanks, guys.